Hello. So if you're anything like me, you hate the idea of wasting time not being able to improve in your sport while you're on the sidelines with an injury, whether that's just for a few days, few weeks, or even months. And so that's why I'm making this video, to give you a few things that you can do to keep improving even when you're injured. Okay, number one is sleep, right? All that time that you now can't spend on the pitch, on the court, in the gym, whatever, spend it sleeping. You know, sleep can be your superpower. We have seen in studies that sleep is really vital to boosting not only your sports performance but your recovery. There's nothing better to do when you're injured than making sure that you're getting enough sleep. Doesn't matter what else you're doing, if you're not dealing with enough sleep, then all the other stuff you do isn't going to be as efficient. So make sure you get enough sleep. Okay, second one is about your nutrition. So just making sure that even when you're not doing your sport, you're still kind of eating like an athlete. And the main thing with that is obviously getting enough kind of vitamins and minerals. I actually recommend taking supplements. I use some from a brand called Extend Life. It's like a New Zealand brand where all their supplements are naturally made. I take their fish oil and multivitamins just to kind of give myself the best chance of providing my body with what it needs to recover, and eating enough protein. That's really important just to maintain your muscle mass while you're not able to train as much. So, you know, it would be a shame to kind of lose any of the strength you've built by kind of not eating properly. So making sure you get your vitamins, minerals and proteins mainly, even when you're injured, is always a good thing to make sure that you're gonna recover well and come back feeling good after your injury. But I will also say it's really important, even when you're injured and you may not be as active, to obviously indulge once in a while. I'm really not endorsing any kind of restrictive diet. I think it's really important to eat good things that you enjoy in moderation, because it's just as important for you to feel good mentally eating foods you enjoy than, you know, feeling good physically eating the stuff that's good for your body too. It's all about that balance. And I will also add again, just making sure to stay hydrated properly even when you're not as active or not doing your sport. Just make sure that you're drinking enough, because that can only aid your recovery. Okay, the next thing, this one is huge. Most people, when they get injured, if it's not as a result of, you know, trauma or a direct hit, if it's an overuse injury, something that has come on over time, that often arises because of a deficiency or a weakness elsewhere. So there's no better time than when you're injured to work on your deficiencies. So common ones for tennis players are having, you know, not enough strength in the back of your shoulders. So your rotator cuff, your rhomboids, any scapular stabilizing exercises, your lats, all of that for tennis players specifically. Then for, you know, for athletes in general, it's always good to have a strong core. That's often an area that is neglected in strength training. Also for a lot of different sports, having strong glutes is really important, because if your glutes don't fire, then your hips tend to compensate. It can lead to lots of issues down your posterior chain, especially in the knees and ankles. A lot of people also just have weak calves. So it's a really good time when you're injured, obviously provided that you're able to train those muscles without bothering your injured part. It's a really good way to spend your time when injured, because not only will that serve as injury prevention for when you come back, you don't want the same thing happening again. It will also just make you a better athlete when you come back, because the fewer deficiencies you have, the better you're going to be. I do plan on making videos at a later date on kind of good exercise routines for the most kind of common deficiencies that I've experienced, mainly back of your shoulders and glutes. So if you're interested, stay tuned to watch that. Okay, so I've talked about strength deficiencies. Another thing that is massively underrated when it comes to preventing and actually treating injuries is mobility. So a lot of people have impingement issues or just pain and stiffness from poor mobility. So you can definitely use your time when you're injured to improve your mobility, whether that's in your injured area, only if you can do it without triggering pain, or just in other areas to make sure that when you come back, you're not gonna get re-injured in a different area. So mobility routines are really important. I actually recommend getting into yoga when you're injured, because yoga tends to be kind of low intensity. Obviously, if you have, you know, a bad arm injury or something, then just do sitting down yoga. There's always ways of kind of training around an injury. You have to make sure that you do what feels right for you. There's no point in doing something that's just going to worsen your pain. Also things like myofascial release, whether that's with a tennis ball, a foam roller, one of those hand rollers, and some people even have, you know, massage guns, things like that, because, you know, those knots can build in your fascia, which is the kind of layer above your muscles that if it's not rolled regularly and massaged regularly, it can cause trigger points, pain in all over your body. So mobility is a really good thing you can do with your time when you're injured, especially because when we're training, mobility tends to get pushed to the side because it's not something that you think is going to directly improve your performance, but it is hugely underrated. So this next one is more applicable for people who do not have kind of lower body injuries, which means that you can still run or cycle or, you know, do some other forms of cardio like that. A great thing you can do when you're injured in the upper body is to train your aerobic conditioning and anaerobic conditioning, so things like long distance running and also more short distance sprints, intervals of sprints, things like that, to just kind of keep your cardiovascular fitness up even when you're not on the field or on the tennis court or whatever. Those things can kind of quickly go away if you don't keep training them. They do come back quite quickly as well, but often over a period of 2-3 weeks. So if you don't want to lose 2-3 extra weeks, it's really good to continue with that side of your training if you can. Okay, so this one might not be as practical as the others, but it consists of asking yourself why you love the sport, why you keep playing, and why is it important to you to come back. Because not only will that sort of allow you to reset and check in on your goals and your kind of attitude towards your sport, it will also boost your motivation, because in most cases you will think of more things you like about your sport than things that you don't like, and that will really motivate you to put the work in that you need to put in to recover. And so making a list of all the things you miss about your sport, your favorite things about it, good memories, things like that, like why do you care, why do you want to be back playing, it can be really good to boost your motivation. I'd actually recommend writing down that list and kind of having it somewhere visible that you can see regularly to kind of keep that motivation up on a regular basis. Along those lines, you can also take this time to think about what kind of athlete you want to be. When I say this, I'm not talking about what do you want to win or what do you want to achieve. I'm talking about more what kind of competitor do you want to be, like what characteristics do you want to show. What is important to you? Is it integrity? Is it resilience? Is it class? All these things. You can take the time to think about more of your like identity as an athlete. What do you want to be when you return? Because then that is likely to make you just a better athlete when you return if you've considered the sort of characteristics that you want to display. Okay, next one is to visualize. I've made a video about this already, but visualization can be so important in your recovery, not only to boost it and ease your fear, but even to kind of, if you're visualizing yourself achieving things or showing good characteristics when you're returning from injury, all that positive kind of imagery that you can send your brain is only going to help you in the long term. Okay, next one. For some people this might be difficult because when you're not able to play your sport, to watch it can be very painful, you know, knowing that you're not able to be out there. It can feel kind of like rubbing salt into a wound. But if you don't feel that way, then it's a really good idea to maybe watch videos of your sport, whether that's your teammates or a professional athlete that you particularly admire. If you can just watch videos of them doing the sport and kind of looking at it with a bit of an analytical hat on, to see, you know, what kind of specific things do these players do that you want to try and implement when you're back from injury. For example, I spent a lot of time watching highlights of WTA tennis matches and focusing on how the players recover in between each shot, because I know that my footwork is something I'm going to need to work on a lot when I return to the court. So if you just watch a lot of content and focus on one or two specific things, that way you can kind of have something to work on even when you're not on the court. It keeps your mind sharp because you're not going to forget things, you know, tactically or technically if you're kind of watching it regularly. Another thing you can do, and this again, depending on whether you're physically capable of doing this, depends on how much of a hindrance your injury is, but I would recommend getting involved with coaching your sport. So this is something I did quite a lot last year. I got my LTA level 2 and halfway through my level 3 coaching qualification. I did my level 1 several years ago, and this is great for several different reasons. The main one being that it keeps you still involved in the sport. Even though you can't play, you're still involved as a coach. It's good socially, you know, you're still kind of in that sport environment. Even though you're not playing, you're still spending time with people who love the sport and you can learn a lot from them. And obviously then, you know, if you're learning how to coach the sport, that can only make you better at the sport in the long term, because you learn to see things differently. You learn things technically and tactically that you can then implement into yourself, and you learn some great communication skills. You build confidence on the field, on the court, and that again is just transferable skills that when you're returning to play will just make you a better person and a better athlete. So if you can get involved with coaching, I would highly recommend that you do. I've had a good time getting involved with coaching, and I probably would not have had the time to had I not been injured. So it's a good way to turn kind of like a negative into a more positive situation. Okay, and the last one, even though this one doesn't have anything to do with sports, it's just as important, and that is to find another hobby that you enjoy and that can give you a sense of purpose and satisfaction while you're not able to do sports. For a lot of people, when they're not able to do their sport, a big part of their identity kind of crumbles. That's definitely what I'm feeling right now. And a good way to kind of combat that is to remind yourself that you're not just an athlete. There's other things you can do that make you you, whether that's as simple as just being a good family member, a good friend, a good partner, you know, learning a language, doing other hobbies like photography, drawing, art, music, general knowledge quizzes. I love those. Just anything that you enjoy and that can take your mind off, you know, not being able to do your sport. Because if you sit there ruminating on the things you aren't able to do, then you're missing out on lots of opportunities of other things that you can do, and that can just be as fulfilling as your sport. And that's really important for you to kind of maintain positivity and a good sense of identity while you're sidelined from your sport. I will also add to that, when you've been injured and spent a lot of time away from the court, it obviously forces you to focus on other things, and that means that when you do inevitably quit your sport or do it less, you know, whether that's when you leave college or if you have a bad injury where you have to stop the sport forever, or you just, you know, life means that you can't continue, you'll be much better equipped to deal with that sense of loss than perhaps someone who's never had to be away from their sport before, and they might find themselves completely lost, not sure what to do when they're, you know, 25, 30, 35. So an experience being injured and learning to kind of cope without being able to do your sport is really going to be helpful to you when the day comes that you stop permanently. Okay, so that's it. Those are the things that I've used in my recovery from injury. I hope you can find them helpful, and I will see you soon for another video. Thank you for watching. Bye.